Hello, I'm Pat Wand, co-chair of the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience. I stand here with a most unusual treasure from the Philippines, brought home by a Peace Corps volunteer in the 1960s. This object, fine gown, stands in sharp contrast with the often everyday and simpler objects that are included in this exhibition. Together, these objects illustrate the diversity of cultures and artifacts around the world. The stories that accompany those objects remind us of the common threads that bind humanity. The Museum of the Peace Corps Experience, in partnership with American University Museum in Washington, D.C., is pleased to welcome you to a virtual tour of the exhibition Peace Corps at 60, inside the volunteer experience.
Hi, I'm Jack Rasmussen, Director and Curator of the American University Museum at the Katzen Art Center. Welcome to our virtual tour. We have two excellent docents to guide you today.
I'm Pat Wand, co-chair of the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience and exhibit coordinator.
And I'm Nicola Dino, the other co-chair. I live in Portland, Oregon, where the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience was founded in the year 2000.
We're going to give you a virtual spin around Peace Corps at 60 inside the volunteer experience.
We begin here with a map showing where Peace Corps volunteers have served over the past 6 decades. More than 240,000 Americans have worked side by host counterparts in 142 countries. In March 2020, when a pandemic turned the world on its head, all volunteers were evacuated from their countries.
Over the past 60 years, volunteers have brought home their stories and their treasures. 34 of those treasures, along with stories that give them life, comprise this exhibit. Many objects from everyday life in villages and communities around the world.
Music and art play an important role in all cultures. An album of music recorded by a volunteer in Eritrea in the 60s captured indigenous music of that era played on the bagana, music seldom heard today. A simpler instrument enabled schoolboys in Lesotho to strike up their own band.
Many household items are decorated elaborately, like the beaded kalabasa from Chad and the 5 baskets from Namibia. In coconut, we find spoons and bowls from the Philippines, along with an exquisite bird carved from a single coconut from Micronesia.
Ceremonial items like the devil's mask from Sierra Leone represent rituals that bond communities. There are implements for curating food and cultivating food, like a hoe and a sling to keep the birds out of the millet crops, along with household essentials in food preparation and sharing. The rice pot from Madagascar, the coal pot to cook food in St. Lucia, and the wine jug for family supra in Georgia.
The heartfelt poem, American Immigrant, offers reflections by a volunteer of color who served in Peru. And you can hear more stories from the diverse volunteers in the video, Many Faces of Peace Corps, 60th Anniversary.
Transportation is a big deal for all volunteers. One of the more unusual forms is horseback, illustrated here by a saddle, bit, harness, and essential equipment used by a volunteer in Chad. Another video, Student Voices, is inspired by the student-led conference held in March 1961 to recommend to Sergeant Shriver characteristics of the new Peace Corps. That conference was held in the very location on American University campus that this exhibit occupies 60 years later.
From the beginning of collecting objects, the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience received donations of slippers and sandals. They come in numerous forms, from highly decorative variety like Thailand and Niger, to wooden sandals designed to walk on the desert sand in Chad. Coincidentally, both Pat and I donated alpargatas, hers from Colombia in the early 1960s and mine from Ecuador in the 90s.
Next, we feature articles of clothing, beginning with a spindle of thread to be woven into the bale of sturdy cotton that becomes a traditional African shirt in Sierra Leone. Shown with great stories from the donors are amulets from the Gambia, the shiftus hat in Somalia, a traditional Guatemalan huipil, and a Colombian ruana by weavers in a cooperative organized by a volunteer in 1961. Next is an intricately designed Maria Clara gown, named for the mixed indigenous and Spanish heritage in Philippines.
More household items include a sleeping mat used on an atoll in the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and a much-loved Jimma stool from Ethiopia that its owners have lent to us, and fans from the Gambia are similar to those we find in many regions. The unique leather camel bell and knives from Somalia were acquired in 1962 by our museum founder, Martin Kaplan. Camel bells and knives happen to overlap with student projects handed into a Peace Corps volunteer teacher who then served in Somalia 9 years later.
Turning now to Western Hemisphere, 4 items from Ecuador and Colombia are clustered together. An album featuring a song, La Norte Americana, written in the 70s for a volunteer who captured the eye of famous Colombian songwriter Alfredo Gutierrez. A rare set of Ecuadorian tin flutes, links to indigenous music in the Andes, and a nearby photo features a snapshot story by a health volunteer. The Photo Colombia is a student project made possible in 2016 by the donation of digital cameras.
The final object, the ubiquitous Peace Corps medical kit, was issued to a volunteer in 1964 in Iran. And despite admonitions not to distribute first aid to local people, the kit was surreptitiously kept supplied throughout the volunteer service, then quietly smuggled home so he could donate it, and its contents for us to appreciate 56 years later.
We hope you've enjoyed this virtual tour. It's a pleasure to celebrate the 60th anniversary with an exhibit that highlights Peace Corps experiences and values.
The exhibit catalog is available for purchase at the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience website, peacecorpsmuseum.org. Search online peacecorpsmuseum.org, where you can view the virtual tour online.
ያስደንቃል አኗኗራቸው የጥንቱን የአብ የወልድ የመንፈስ ቅዱስ ሶስቱ ናቸው። በአካል በገጽ በስም አንድ ናቸው። በትእዛዝ በግብር ፍጹም ሥላሴዎችም እምቅድመ ዓለም ሲኖሩን ዓለም መፍጠር